Hello YouTube, I'm getting married today, isn't that wonderful? But obviously we can't stop the card combo show for anything like that now, can we? Anyway, this week I'm going to be looking at the rootinest, tootinest, most shootinest Final Fantasy characters there are in the Final Fantasy TCG. This week I'm looking at Laguna from Opus 1, Barret from Opus 4, Yuna from Opus 2, Rufus from Opus 15, and finally Gadot from Opus 5. So a lot of old cards and a very, very new card. Alright, first up we got Laguna. So he's a 5 CP ice forward and 9k power. When Laguna deals damage to your opponent, choose one dull forward. You may deal it 7,000 damage. Desperado, S and 2 ice. Choose one dull forward, deal it 9,000 damage. So I will fully admit that this episode started off by being legend cards that aren't very good, because this card isn't very good at all. As much as I love Final Fantasy VIII and as much as I love Laguna as a character, this card sucks. It wasn't particularly great in Opus 1, and it's definitely not great now, especially when you look at the, the Opus 14 Laguna. Anyway, there are ways to make him a little bit better, and we're going to look at that. So first off, Snow. So when a forward you control attacks, choose from forward opponent controls, dull it, because one of the worst things about Laguna was that you attack with him, and if your opponent's got no dull forwards, but they don't want to block it, you don't get any benefit from Laguna. Obviously you've got the attack anyway, but still, making it so Snow dulls a forward out means that you can at the very least deal 7k to a forward. Next we've got Manasvin Warmech. So 7k damage is fine, but it's not really enough to deal with a forward. Yeah, there's plenty of small forwards out there, but big forwards are a problem. So combining Manasvin and Snow is always a great one, because you pay them on fire. Laguna's now going to deal 9k to a dull forward, and you've dulled that forward with Snow. So not too bad. Next we've got Last Well. So when an ice or when a fire or ice forward you control attacks, choose on forward opponent controls, deal it 3,000 damage. So that combined with the damage that Laguna's actually going to be dealing, that's not bad. That's 10k damage. You could obviously throw Manasvin into the mix as well to increase the damage either Last Well or Laguna does, so you could target 2 separate forwards if you wanted to. And again, combined with Snow means that you actually have a forward ready to be targeted by Laguna. Then you got Quistis. So she is especially good with Laguna at damage 5. So when Quistis enters, she reveals if you reveal an ice card off the top of your deck, get to add that to your hand. If you're mono ice, that's fine. But at damage 5, when Quistis enters the field, choose one category 8 card in your break zone and add it to your hand. So what you could do is use Laguna's S ability, Desperado, for an S and 2 ice. Choose one dull forward, deal 9k damage. If your opponent's got 2 dull forwards, what you could do is use Desperado, then play Quistis onto the field, and if you are in mono ice, that means you will reveal an ice card off the top, you get that to hand, but at damage 5, Quistis can then get you back that Laguna card you used for the S ability, which means you now have the card in hand for the discard, and you now have the Laguna card in hand for the discard for his S ability, so it means that you can use it twice. Shan Toto. So Laguna states it can be, choose one dull forward. Doesn't have to be your opponent's forward. So if you've got a dull Shan Toto, attack with Laguna, deal 7k to Shan Toto, or 9k if you really wanted to, and then flicker that damage around the board and hopefully wipe your opponent's field. Just make sure not to wipe your own field at the same time. Okay, next we have Barret. So he's a 4 CP 8k Earth forward with Brave, and when a job Avalanche operative you control other than Barret is put from the field into the break zone, deal 2,000 damage to all the forwards your opponent controls. And then Satellite Beam, S, 2 Earth and Dull, deal 5,000 damage to all the forwards your opponent controls. Again, not fantastic, but he has some okay synergies with the new starter deck forwards Avalanche operative. Obviously got lots of Jesse, Biggs and Wedge. So, Wedge, obviously. This basically just means that with this Barret on the field, you can make it so that Wedge will trade up with a 9 CP forward as well. Obviously, if you used the Barret from the starter set, you could dole that Barret out to just break a forward anyway. But this means that all your Avalanche operatives have the potential to kill something when they're blocked or if they are blocking as well. Tifa. So, when Tifa enters the field, you may search for one card and then cloud and add it to your hand. Excuse me. That doesn't really matter. To be honest, this is just more about, Avalanche operatives, and it means that you've got the smaller forwards like Tifa that can, again, trade up. She now becomes effectively a 7k when she blocks or is blocked, but also if you have the other Avalanche operatives that attack, they become 8k when Tifa's on the field. With Barret, that then trades up to be a 10k, which is far more significant as well. Yeah. Manasvin War Mech. So, let's say you have a couple on the field and they end up dying. If you use Manasvin War Mech on Barret, that actually means that you'll get 2 instances of 4k damage to your opponent's board, meaning that you've dealt 8k to the entire board. Now, obviously, if your opponent has blocked 2 and you've already dealt 4k, that means you'll have dealt, you know, 11k, sorry, wow, bad math, to 2 forwards anyway. But if your opponent's got a lot of forwards, especially if a lot of big forwards, which isn't that hard to do anymore, it just means that you're able to get a bit more of a clearer board wipe. Vincent. So when Vincent enters fields, you may put one back up you control into the break zone. When you do so, choose one dot forward, deal 8k damage. So you could potentially use Vincent to put one of the avalanche operatives backups into the break zone, which would then deal 2k to your opponent's board using Barret, if maybe 4k if you want to use the Manasvin War Mech, and then Vincent himself would actually deal 8k to something as well. So it means just Vincent targeting one thing and then 2k from Barret, you're doing 10k to something, which ain't too bad. Graph. So at the beginning of your attack phase, during each of your turns, all the Earth forwards and category Mobius forwards you control gain plus 2,000 power until the end of the turn. So it means that all your forwards are far more substantial, and obviously all the Avalanche operatives are in Earth. So they're going to become huge, and then the damage that they will deal if they die with Barret on the field as well, means that there's even more of a formidable force that your opponent doesn't really want to have to deal with. Kefka. So let's say you've got 3 Avalanche operatives on the field, and you've got Barret there. Use Manasvin War Mech on your Barret, and then you put 3 of them into the break zone to play Kefka on the field. You get to break something and deal 12k to your opponent's board. It's a bit of a heavy investment, and ultimately, you know, the Avalanche operatives are quite strong anyway on the field. You may not want to put them into the break zone, but if you come up against a bit of a brick wall and there's not much you can do, maybe that's the way around it. Alright, Yuna, so a 3 CP 7k water forward. When Yuna attacks, all characters other than light and dark opponent controls lose all their abilities until the end of the turn. And sphere change, just an S, name one element and one job. Yuna becomes the named element and job until the end of the turn. So, a lot to take on board there. All characters other than light and dark opponent controls lose their abilities until the end of the turn. So that means if they've got some sort of backup protection, or they've got something, some ability that they want to use in response to you doing something, they have to use it then and there with the Yuna attack. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to use it at all. So Yuna is a great way to force your opponent's hand, or just get rid of some really, really annoying abilities. Feel Thanos, Aerith backup, you know, all these things. Just, it gets rid of so many problematic cards. And sphere change is actually pretty cool because name one element and job, Yuna gains both, or not gains both, becomes both, sorry. Remember, there is a difference between becomes and gains. Gains means that she is still water, becomes means that she is no longer water, and as she becomes the named element and job, she is no longer a songstress, nor is she a water forward, unless of course you choose songstress or water. So, Gentiana, the dull forwards opponent controls lose their abilities. So this basically means that you have more of your opponent's field locked down, so when their forwards are dull, they lose their abilities, and when Yuna attacks, all the characters lose their abilities. So it means that your opponent really has to take on board in what situations they can actually use their abilities, or if they even can at any point, you know? It just really stresses out your opponent, especially if you start including things like Sid Hayes or Charlotte, where they have to target her and you can't get rid of Gentiana or Yuna. It's a great way to be able to lock your opponent's board down. Sylph. When a lightning job primal enters your field, activate Sylph or use the dull ability, but you can only use it if you control a lightning job primal. That doesn't matter because Yuna's sphere change ability means that she can become a lightning element job primal, which I love that. Obviously, it won't trigger Sylph's entry ability, or the entry ability to reactivate Sylph, because even if you play Yuna onto the field and then make her a lightning job primal, it doesn't matter, she didn't enter as one, so it won't reactivate Sylph. But still, it means that you can ultimately use Sylph's ability if you really want to do. So you could be in lightning water and you just want to blindside your opponent, you sphere change on Yuna, all of a sudden you've got lightning primal and start using Sylph. Obviously it works in every element as well, water especially, because obviously Yuna's already a water anyway, but you know, you could be fire or earth, it doesn't matter. So many of those abilities are just fantastic anyway, and being able to make it so that Yuna is now a primal in the correct element, hilarious. Ravus. So similarly, you can use Yuna to make her become a captain. She dies, you then can play Ravus onto the field for only 1 CP. Necron. So, you may not have enough dark characters on the field at the end of your turn, so you can use Sphere Change, make Yuna a dark card, and, you know, she's one of the few cards that when she becomes something, or she doesn't state not dark or light, so it means that she can ultimately become a dark card until the end of the turn, which would trigger for when Necron checks. If you have enough dark characters, all of a sudden, you deal your opponent point damage. Spiritus. So your opponent blocks your Yuna. Yuna's about to die. Make her a dark card. All of a sudden, she gets to kill the blocking forward, and you get to remove something. Amazing. Yuzuki. So if a water forward you control is dealt damage, reduce damage by 2,000. If a fire forward you control is dealt damage by your opponent's abilities, the damage becomes 0 instead. So it's just a nice way, depending on what your unit is being hit with, you can use a Sphere Change to make her a fire forward. This also applies to Celestia as well, so it means that you could make her, you know, an ice forward as well. So if you were targeted, you get to dull and freeze something out. So there you go again. And you know, having both Celestia and Yuzuki on the field means that both the water abilities will target Yuna, and if you do change her to fire or ice, they won't target her anymore because she is no longer a water forward, but it's a great way to be able to get around or lock your opponent's field down. Barbarisha. So when Barbarisha enters the field, it deals 2,000 damage to all the forward opponent controls for each job archfiend you control. So this is a great way to actually make it so that you could play Barbarisha, or, you know, play the Goldbergs to get all the archfiends onto the field and deal a lot of damage to your opponent's field. But you include Barts on there as well. You could have Barbarisha, Cagnazzo, Scarmelian, and the one that I'm forgetting, Rubicante. Sorry, Rubicante, Barts, and Yuna. That means you get to deal 10k to your opponent's board, which is hilarious, especially because you'll have 5 forwards on the field anyway. So, 6 forwards on the field. I can do math. Wow. Sorry, I've got a lot on the mind, you know. Alright, now we've got Rufus. So, he's a fantastic card. He's just really, really strong. The problem is that damage 5 and the ability costs a lot. Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about it, but ultimately he's got First Strike and Brave as standard. He's a 9k and at damage 5 when Rufus enters the field. You may pay 2 ice, 2 lightning, and 2 anything. When you do so, choose any number of job member of the Turks with different names in your breaks and play them onto the field. So that is just, you know, a super strong ability, a great comeback mechanic, but ultimately you have to hit damage 5, so it has to be a comeback mechanic. And if your opponent has cleared your break zone, kind of sucks, and especially given the fact that you could pay the 6 and then your opponent responds with something like a Mist Dragon. Yeah, you've just discarded a lot of cards from hand to be able to do this. But ultimately, Rufus, strong card on his own. So something like Dwarka to make him only a 3 CP 9k First Strike Brave, that's fine in my books. You obviously could throw Stern Leonis in there as well to make him only a 2 CP, which is just disgusting. I hate Stern Leonis, I really do. Alcid. So again, it works excellently just like Zeramus. So you play Rufus onto the field, he applies both of Alcid's abilities. So when Ice Forward is entered, you get to freeze something, and when Rufus attacks, you get to dull something out of the way as well, which is just great. Now you can throw Backnami in there. Now this is an interesting card. When Rufus enters the field, you get to dull something up because of Backnami, and then you also get to freeze something because of Alcid. And given the fact that Alcid is focusing on the ice ability to be able to freeze one of your opponent's characters, and Backnami is looking at the lightning, you can only do this combination with an ice lightning forward, which is not many cards in the game, obviously, so it's quite a rare combination, but funny nonetheless. And then obviously you've got Snow as well, so that means you can dull 2 things out on attack when you attack with Alcid, and Snow on the field with Rufus. And again, Rufus just super strong, being brave as well, excellent ability. Scholar, dull, choose 1 forward until the end of the turn. It loses haste, First Strike, and Brave. So this is just an excellent way to make it so that maybe Rufus is going to come up against a First Strike forward. Use Scholar. Now Rufus is the only one with First Strike, and shouldn't be a problem. Jake. So let's say you play Rufus onto the field. You pay the 2 ice, the 2 lightning, the 2 colorless, and you bring all of the Turks onto the field. You go to combat, and I think it's Reno. If you control 4 or more Turks, something like that, then, you know, they all gain haste. And as they've all entered the field this turn, with Jake, they'll all have gained plus 4,000 power, not to mention the buffs I'll be getting from each other and from Sung as well. There's just so much going on, but just to put Jake and Jake to the mix so they're all huge, and then just go swinging. Summoner. So this is what I was talking about earlier. You pay the 2 ice, the 2 lightning, and the 2 colorless to get the the Dirks out of your break zone, and your opponent responds with something like a Mist Dragon. You're gonna need a defense against that because there's just so many good ways to be able to clear your opponent's break zone now. So having some sort of protection against that, if you're running a Turks deck, is essential. And finally, Amaterasu as well, similar sort of thing. You pay all this investment into getting all these forwards out, and your opponent plays Shantoto. Well, you just wasted a lot of CP, and those cards are now removed as well. So having Amaterasu or something to stop and auto ability triggering is probably really good. There are quite a few, well, I say quite a few, there are some cards in both Ice and Lightning as well to be able to play a summon out of color, so it may be worth doing just to make sure that you can stop your opponent from clearing your board with Shantoto or the like. Last but not least, we have Gadot, or Gadot, however you want to say it. 4 CP, AK, fire forward. The forwards of cost 2, you control gain plus 2,000 power, and when Gadot attacks, choose 1 forward, it gains haste until the end of the turn. So, it's a fine card, just no real place for him in any decks anymore because there's so many incredible cards now. Yeah. But either way, he's a fun card, and I like to throw him in every now and then. So Phoenix is an obvious choice because you play Phoenix, you then get to play a 2-cost onto the field. If you've got Gadot there, it then gains plus 2k power, not to mention the fact that Phoenix has dealt 2k to opponent's board as well. So it means that even if you bring out a little 5k forward, it can block your opponent's forwards for effectively 9, which is decent. Rubicante, so at damage 3, obviously he gains plus 3,000 power as well, so he's an 8k. With Gadot on the field, he's now a 10k. And if Rubicante is put from the field to the break zone, it will reference his power when he left the field, which will be 10, which means that if he blocks for 10k, I'll probably kill the forward that he's blocked or is blocking, and then he'll get to deal 10k to something else as well. Similarly, Arden, when he enters the field, and again you could combo this with the Phoenix, he can choose all the forwards until the end of the turn gain plus 1,000 first strike. I mean, he'll already be a 9k with Gadot and just himself, then making him a 10k first strike. Yeesh, not to mention the fact that Phoenix will have dealt 2k to your opponent's board as well. Or you can just choose one forward until the turn it gains plus 3,000 power and brave. So you could effectively make Arden a 12k forward, which is hilarious. Tifa, similar sort of thing, but just making her a bit more survivable and combining her maybe with Barret from earlier. So she will deal 2k when she leaves the field. She also has 2k extra. She can play loads of things onto the field. And then ultimately, also when Gadot attacks to give something haste, he will actually gain plus 1,000 as well through Tifa's effect. Chicory. Because they're huge already, why not make them bigger? Simple as that. Charlotte. Damage 3, she gains plus 2,000 power, and damage dealt to her is reduced by 2k as well, so she becomes a 7, which is pretty reasonable, making her a 9k even better. If you want to make it even more awkward, you could also throw Lugae into the mix, so Charlotte becomes an 11k forward with Brave that has to be targeted but takes reduced damage. I mean, wow, that's just hilarious. Scarmelian. So you can back attack your Scarmelian, enters the field, choose a forward, attacking forward, and you get to first strike it with Scarmelian. He's at 5k, so now he's blocking for 10. Not bad. Zidane. So I like this because obviously Gadot can attack, give Zidane haste, and Zidane can now attack without being blocked. But Zidane is also 8k as well, so it means he's just got a bit more survivability. And finally, not Charlotte. Zemus. Yeah, so one of the problems with Gadot is the fact that he has to attack to give haste something, and normally that isn't great, because your opponent's going to have something to block with, and you don't want Gadot to die because of the buff he's giving to your forwards. So what do? You play Zemus. Zemus means that he obviously can't be blocked, and he just swings on through, gives haste to something else. He may be something like Zidane, who also can't be blocked, and then can swing through as well, do another point of damage. It's just an excellent way of being able to make it so that Gadot can actually make use of his effect without having to worry about him dying when he attacks. Cool. All done. Yes, so obviously I'm getting married today, so there's going to be a little drop-off in content for a short while. But in that short while, I'm actually going to be recording a boatload of videos because I mean, it's been kind of lagging a little bit recently, I realise, but, you know, organising a wedding is no mean feat, and there's a lot to do. But I've got a couple of weeks off work now. Plain sailing. I can get plenty of videos recorded. I can actually get back on the card combo show. Can get back on behind the card. Also do some more deck reviews as well. Do a review of the Avalanche versus Shinra starter deck as well. So there's plenty to come, don't you worry. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, guys. I want to give a big shout out to my wife. And see you guys in the next one.